Hello and welcome into Off the Bench here on a muggy Wednesday. And it's pretty apropos here in the Queen City as, it feels a little muggy with our current fan bases. The Bengals are out of postseason hunt. Not even going to leave the door open for that. And the excitement that seemingly was building comes to his head, flipped on his head yesterday as Kyle Schwarber, the hometown kid, he's from Middletown, if you did not know. He re-signed with the Philadelphia Phillies, a 5-year, $150 million deal. We'll talk a great deal about that. And then as every Wednesday, we will hear from our esteemed listeners, from everyone that gets into our DMs, that gets into our email, and sends in the mailbags. So the mailbag will take up a great portion of today's show. We'll also talk pretty heavily about Kyle Schwarber, as I have several opinions, several takes on the whole situation. And it felt really like, as high as Reds fans were riding about 11 a.m. yesterday, when 11:15 hit and the news came out, it felt like they were as down as I've seen them in well over a year. And of course, more news came out. Quotes: They're not gonna go after any big time free agents or spend money like that. It was really just a one-off situation. We'll dive into all that. I'm Reed Mouse. Joining along with me is Stone Shields. We have no guests today, but as we mentioned, it's going to go a big mailbag. We might have some big guests coming on later on this week. Be checking our socials for those guests if we ever get those lined up. But we should be having some big time guests tomorrow. To be in fact. Stone.
What up?
Is that a Miami shirt today? Is that a UC shirt, or is that just red?
Just a red shirt.
Just a red shirt.
But yep, it's for the Red Hawks, definitely.
The victory bell. You switch sides on that victory bell all the time. I'll give Stone credit. He never wears branded stuff, really. He likes to keep it unbiased. I don't know if that's for the YouTube clips or anything like that. I pulled out a Bluffton baseball hitting jacket that I haven't worn in about 8 years because, to be quite honest, I've been kind of lazy on the laundry over the past few days. So we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. So that's why we're rocking what we're rocking today. Let's dive into today's show. And the first thing that we want to talk about, as I've already alluded to in the pre or at the beginning of the show here, is Kyle Schwarber. The Reds had circled the name, the hometown kid, willing to make an exception, offered him 4 years, $120 million, and a potential to earn more, whatever the hell that means. And they lost out to the Philadelphia Phillies on a 5-year, $150 million deal. And there's a lot of places I can go, and I apologize if I'm scattered all over the place, but I'll start here. For those that are quick to say, the dude's already a multi-millionaire, why isn't he willing to come home or take a discount to come back near the town he was? It's a reminder, $30 million isn't just a small deal. It's more money than I will can conceivably make in my entire life of working. And it is the difference in your grandkids and your great-grandkids not just being set up, but being able to do fun things, pursue dreams, and help communities. $30 million is such an absurd amount of money that, you're not going to, as much as he wanted to come home. And I truly believe that he had sincere interest. I don't think this was just a leverage from the Kyle Schwarber camp. I truly believe that he had interest in wanting to come play for the hometown team. But money, the opportunity, the perceived opportunity, we'll see. The perceived opportunity to compete for championships as opposed to what it would take here in Cincinnati to compete for a championship outweighed the Reds' offer. And there's also a fact of, we talk about the chance to come home and play for the hometown team. He fully understood that if he was able to have any sort of success, any team success, he wouldn't just be a hometown hero in this town. He would be a legend. And still that $30 million in Philadelphia, where they love him, outweighed it. And for those that are just looking, well, why couldn't the Reds just match it? What happens if the Reds matched the Phillies offer? Do we think that Kyle Schwarber to come out. It is my belief that yes, if the Reds ever matched the Philadelphia Phillies offer, he would come home. I believe he's that type of guy. That he would want to come play for the hometown team, become a legend. Grow up his family, raise his family in the same area where he grew up, around their grandparents. But I also believe this, that there wasn't a real capacity in which the Reds were ever going to match the Phillies offer. And this is why I say that. Kyle Schwarber gets his career started with the Chicago Cubs. They non-tender him in 2021. They asked Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer a few years later about that decision to non-tender him, and they said it was one of the biggest mistakes that they've made in their tenure at the helm of baseball operations for the Chicago Cubs. The reason that they think that was a huge mistake isn't just Kyle Schwarber was flourishing as a baseball player. What is because what he brings into the locker room, what he brings to a team, what he brings to a fan base. He's a guy easy to root for. He's a guy that can lift up an entire team just by his mere presence in the way that he did when he was in college and took the Indiana Hoosiers to the College World Series, just like Curt Cignetti is doing with the Indiana Hoosiers. Indiana's not known as a baseball school. And I took him to the College World Series because he's got the ability to raise a team and raise a team's ceiling and raise a team's floor. That didn't just happen in Chicago, by the way. He then signs a prove-it deal with the Nationals, has a great half year, goes to the Boston Red Sox, has a phenomenal postseason run. They don't let him go. And I apologize. I probably should have looked this up. I think it's Craig Breslow, the general manager at the time. But I do remember the reports come out that after they didn't re-sign him, after the Red Sox let him go and let him go to the Phillies, they said the same thing. They rang home the same sentiments that Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer made, which was, I cannot believe we let this guy go. We cannot believe that Kyle Schwarber, the high character, high talent level, slugger, fan favorite, we cannot believe that we let him go to another team. One of the bigger mistakes that the Red Sox GM had made. Said so himself. So I believe that the Phillies were never going to let that happen. When two highly accomplished, highly esteemed, smart executives say the same thing, the Phillies aren't going to let that home because they've seen what he's been able to do. They have competed for World Series. They have competed for pennants in the National League, won one. And it was in great part because of what Kyle Schwarber, he's a flawed player, guys. We're not talking about prime Mike Trout. We're not talking about Barry Bonds roided up. He's a flawed player. He can't play a lick of defense. He's over 30 years old. He leads the league in strikeouts consistently. But he does got some pop in the bat. He does walk quite a bit. And more, perhaps than anything, he's a guy that can raise the floor and the ceiling in the locker room and be a leader for the team that, I get it, I know. People that, in this town, you have to be analytically minded. You have to have an analytic mind if the Reds are going to want to compete in baseball because they are so behind the eight ball when it comes to money. That you don't want to hear about how important it is to have great clubhouse guys, how important it is to have great leadership in a room. But Kyle Schwarber was that, and it does matter. I don't care what they say. It does. Because anyone, as I've said a billion times on this show, and I'll continue to say it, we know that human beings need great leadership. Kyle Schwarber is that kind of a player. So, in sum, I don't think the Reds really ever had a fair shake at it. And I don't blame Reds fans for getting excited because he is that type of excitement. He can generate that type of excitement. Who doesn't want to see a kid that grew up in the area, grew up a Reds fan, come back and put on the jersey and fill a glaring hole on the team? One that was so easy, like he fits as a puzzle piece almost as well as anyone could. Left-handed slugger. You need a left-handed slugger. At Great American Ballpark, this dude can bomb it. To where he's going to be consistently, or if he stays healthy and doesn't decline off a cliff, hitting 50 home runs. And I'm not speaking with hyperbole there. Hitting 50 home runs at Great American Ballpark. But here's what I'll say. After it came out, it said two things. One, that the Reds aren't committing that $120 million that they offered to Kyle Schwarber really anywhere else. This was a one-off offer, which is much inclined with or in line with pretty much every report that's come out, that this was a unicorn, per se, of a situation here in Cincinnati. That because he fit the team well, because he fit what they were trying to do, and he was exactly what they needed, a left-handed bat, they were willing to go out and spend it. Then the report comes out that a big portion of the reason that they were willing to do this was because they believed that it would drum up ticket sales. And that's the only reason they were willing to do it, is because the excitement that Kyle Schwarber would bring to this team would drum up ticket sales in the excess of where they will recoup, they'll get a return on investment of $120 million. And I don't know if that is exactly what executives for the Reds have said, but if they truly believe that one player, Kyle Schwarber, is as big of a draw, you can put him on all the billboards around town, and they are going to recoup $120 million from that one signing because of name alone and vibes alone, then they're just quite simply aren't great businessmen, because there's just no way. There's no way, and I've said this before, there is no way that you can convince yourself that one player would sell enough tickets to make $120 million in this town. And the reason I know that is because, one, it's happened before in this town. The hometown kid, fan favorite, comes to town, and it didn't amass in a massive hike, a sustained hike in ticket sales. And two, through the history of baseball, even in this town, especially in this town, the only thing that brings players to or brings fans to the ballpark is true winning baseball. It is the only thing that will get the Reds into the 2.5 million yearly attendance. Let me take you back. The year is 1999. The Reds win 96 games and lose in game 163 to Al Leiter. We know the story. And what do they do that offseason? They bring in a hometown kid, Moeller Crusader, and the biggest name in the sport. They bring home Ken Griffey Jr. Kyle Schwarber is a draw. There's no doubt about it. But he pales in comparison to what Ken Griffey Jr. was in the late 90s, early 2000s. In fact, at that time, in sports, I don't think I'm stretching reality too far to say that behind Michael Jordan, behind Tiger Woods, who was surging at the time, and behind Brett Favre, that Ken Griffey Jr. was the biggest name in sports. And they brought him into Cincinnati coming off not an 83-win season in which you got punked in the playoffs by the Dodgers, a 96-win season. And did attendance spike up? Yes, it did. It did. In 1999, when they won 96 games, they had just over 2 million in attendance. In 2000, they win 83 games, first year of Ken Griffey Jr. Attendance, 2.5 million, 500,000 improvement. The years after that, back under 2 million. Year after that, back under 2 million. And in fact, that was the trend throughout the entirety of Ken Griffey Jr.'s run here in Cincinnati. The reason why is because they weren't winning. And I get, you can look at the 2012, 2013, 2010 season, and that's the only time that the Reds have come close to getting 2.5 million in attendance. The idea that Kyle Schwarber, who certainly would have put butts in the seats in April and May and even June and July maybe, but that would go so fast unless the Reds were true contenders, true competitors, a 90-win team. To where you can tell yourself, you can fool yourself that, oh, this is going to be some great business opportunity to bring home Schwarber. He's going to hit 50 home runs. And he's from Middletown, Reds fan. But the only thing that puts butts in the seats is winning. It is. It's the only thing. So that quote and that idea is absolutely ludicrous. Now, if you tell me that Kyle Schwarber joins this team and they would be a better team, and all of a sudden they are a 90-win team, then yeah, ticket sales will go through the roof. Because as a baseball fan, there is no better vibe in this town in Southwest Ohio than when the Reds are good. You go to the local bar, you go to the local brewer, wherever you're going out, you're hearing people talk about it, you're watching it on the TVs, and people are locked in. It's not just background noise like they have been for the last decade or so. People are locked in. You're having conversations with your dad, your cousins, your friends about what the Reds are doing that night. Oh, we got the Dodgers coming in. Oh, we got the Brewers coming to town. This is a big series. Yes, that excitement gets people to the ballparks. But if Kyle Schwarber would have came here, even if he's hitting 50 home runs, but the Reds are still winning 78 to 83 games, they ain't going to have a big uptick in sales. So that idea is just absolutely lunacy to me. So, in summary, as exciting, I do think the Reds made a conscious effort. It was an offer that I believe was double. I listened to Nick Kirby and Trace's podcast. I didn't know this. Double the biggest free agent offer the Reds have ever made. Now, they did sign Joey Votto for $200 million, but that was obviously a re-signing and extension. Biggest free agent signing that the Reds had ever offered. I do believe there was genuine excitement or genuine connection for Kyle Schwarber to want to come home. But I also believe that the Reds were never matching the Phillies' offer because the Phillies were just going to keep on going up because they can miss. They can miss on a $30 million a year deal, as they've done with Nick I don't know his contract, but they've missed with Nick Castellanos, and they've missed on deals before. And finally, that the only way to really drum up ticket sales in this city is by putting a good product out on the field and by putting a championship. You watch this city. If they have sustained success as they did in the early 2010s, and this team is winning the NL Central and making runs in the postseason, you watch how excited this team can get, how excited this city can get, the same way that we've seen it in across just the banks. In 2020, we were talking about there was Bengals fans that were saying, "I don't care if they sell the team. Go to Dublin, go to London, go to Munich, go wherever. I'm tired of it." And 1 year later, they make the Super Bowl. And even with all the detriment that's had over the last 3 years, people are still excited every single time. And they still sell out Paycor Stadium. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison, but it's one of note. Stone, before we get into the mailbag, I know you're going to break into it later on in your show. I wanted to get Kirby on here, but he had things to attend to, family things, and I wanted to break his ear. I don't know if you had one big takeaway. Do you think that the Reds had a legitimate shake at getting Kyle Schwarber?
Well, there's a couple of different takeaways, and I'll fully dive into that at the 11 o'clock hour. But I do think there's reason to be sad. There's reason to be angry. But there's also a reason to be like, okay, I don't want to throw out the word happy, but maybe cautiously optimistic. I mean, the fact that the Reds threw $125 million at a free agent is unprecedented, as you mentioned. So, the reports came out that it was kind of a one-off, kind of a unicorn situation, probably not going to make that kind of offer to another free agent. But, that shows that they're somewhat serious about trying to put a quality product on the field. And to be honest, I don't think there's another name out there on the market that I would want nearly as much as Kyle Schwarber. I understand Pete Alonso hits a lot of home runs there as well, but you have to understand that when you make an offer like that as this organization and you miss, that could set you back for a really, really long time. I think that's also something that people aren't realizing. What if Schwarber came here and hit 200 and only hit 30 bombs for the next couple of years? Like, that would be the worst signing of all time. So, I think it's frustrating because it seemed like they actually were somewhat close. I think a lot of people thought originally it was a pipe dream. Well, no, it was a little bit more than that. They had him come into the ballpark. He sat down with Castellini. He sat down with the front office. He sat down with Francona, and it was close. But at the end of the day, you can't fault him for wanting $25 million to stay where he was with the team that, outside of the Dodgers, they're kind of the prime team in the National League, I would argue. So I don't fault him at all for that. It's sad because it was so close. But I'm kind of, I wouldn't have expected Cincinnati to offer $125 million, so I am relatively pleased about that.
Yeah, no, it's almost like a bait and switch, right? You are excited that the Reds offered that. It shows that they have the capacity to do that. But then it comes out immediately that says, oh, we're not doing that anymore. That was a one-off situation because of all the extenuating circumstances of, oh, yeah, he is from Middletown. Oh, yeah, he is a Reds fan. Oh, yeah, he kind of fits perfectly in what we're trying to build here. Oh, yeah, he's a great clubhouse. All those things to where, like, you can convince yourself. You can convince ownership to take a legitimate stab at that. But then they just immediately go away and they go, yeah, we're not doing that anywhere else. So they've got to look elsewhere. They've got to look in trades. They've got to, I don't know. There's still a chance that this Reds team can create excitement around the team. I don't know where that is. I don't know what avenue that is, but as excited as Reds fans were yesterday right before the news broke, because it did feel like there was consistent smoke and you're finally getting to the edge of the smoke and seeing if there was actually a fire, and you get there and it's just Citizens Bank Park and they just brought home Kyle Schwarber. And there was legitimate interest from both sides in this pretty clearly. The Reds did make a conscious effort, but they were going to get outbid, and they always were going to get outbid, and I truly believe that. I don't believe that the Phillies were ever going to let Kyle Schwarber go away the same way that two franchises have. And, oh, yeah, by the way, those two franchises that I mentioned haven't been to the heights that they were at pre-Kyle Schwarber. The Cubs have not won a pennant since Kyle Schwarber has left. They have not been to an NLCS since Kyle Schwarber has left, where Kyle Schwarber played in 3 NLCSs. The Red Sox had not had the same success post Kyle Schwarber that they had with him there. Postseason hero. And what did the Phillies? They bring in him. They win a pennant. They go to an NLCS. Consistent NL contender. One of the true teams that we talk about can beat the Dodgers. Speaking of the Dodgers, the same time that news broke about Kyle Schwarber going to Phillies, the Dodgers break an AAV record, annual average value record for signing a closing pitcher. It is absolutely bonkers. You know my take on relief pitchers, that a team could offer someone $23 million for 50 innings, and he might not be that good. He's had severe injuries. And they committed $70 million. Same way that they offered, I think, Tanner Scott $80 million last year, but it was a lower AAV. Just crazy to think that the Dodgers are continuing to do that. But I don't know. I don't know what to say. People say the sport is broken. I have a completely different take on that. All right, let's get into mailbag. It's Wednesday. I ranted. I raved about Kyle Schwarber. We were so thankful to have so many great mailbags from some esteemed people. So let's break right into the first mailbag, Stone.
Real quickly, Reader, I've heard stuff about Skubal to the Dodgers. Have you heard anything about that?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not researched that. That would not surprise me. So the thing that the Dodgers don't get enough credit for is that they have always, not only have they recently, ever since the acquisition, and they just said, all right, if they're going to allow us to spend as much money as possible, we're going to do exactly that because we got more money than anybody. We got more fans going to the games. We have the biggest ballpark in the league. And on top of that, we're the second biggest valuation in the league. So we're just going to spend more money than everyone else, and we don't care. But they've always done a fantastic job at bringing up legitimate talent. Like, we're not talking about the mid-2000s Yankees, though they are getting there. We're the mid-2000s Yankees. We're just Jason Giambi, Gary Sheffield, Bobby Abreu, Roger Clemens. Just bring them all in. We'll just sign every single guy. The Dodgers over the last decade have brought up great names. Corey Seager, was the number 1 overall prospect, and he looks to be heading to a Hall of Fame career. Obviously, he's not there anymore. Cody Bellinger won an MVP. Came up. Julio Urias. There's several names. Gavin Lux, I think, was the 2nd overall prospect at one point. Maybe the 1st overall prospect. I forget. It gets a little fuzzy. I know it was a really weird year when he got that prospect rankings because it was 2019 and the balls were juiced, and he batted like 400 in minor leagues, but it still didn't have like a top 20 OPS in the California League. Go look it up. Those are all true things. But they've had a great capacity of always bringing up great talent. So when there's guys like Tarek Skubal on the market, they're able to go and trade. They're able to release some of those guys or trade some of those guys and make decisions like that. So I need to read into that more, but I don't get too worked up in the whole Dodgers are ruining the sport thing because it feels two things. I guess I'll do it. One, baseball is random. It has always been random. Baseball is much more even today than it was 70 years ago at its prime when the Yankees and the Dodgers were winning every single World Series, because this was before the draft, and I know the times have changed drastically. It is more fair today than it was at its height in popularity. And it's the first time that we've seen back-to-back champions in the National League since the Reds 50 years ago. It's the first time that we've seen back-to-back champions. So I don't think that it's a completely broken sport. I'll also say this. The same people that tell me how broken that sport is are the same ones that love college football and love college basketball and the sports where the same 4 teams win the championship or compete for the championship every single year. So I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for people that think that way. Like if you're a Reds fan and you're complaining about the Reds not being able to compete for championships, but you're also an Ohio State fan who's seen an 11 to 12 win season every single year, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for you. Now, if you are a Reds fan and a Bengals fan and a UC Bearcats fan, then I got a little bit of sympathy for you. All right, let's break into the mailbag.
Sorry, Reader. I didn't mean to get you that fired up. I was just curious about school.
It's okay.
All right, here we go. Mailbag. OTB. Phillip Rivers is coming back to sign and play for the Indianapolis Colts. He is 44 and literally a grandfather. What do you make of this situation? And that comes in from Mr. 4 home runs in one game, Scooter Jeanette.
Scooter Jeanette. Love that. Phillip Rivers. Isn't this wild? Isn't this an absolute – he's not going to play this week, right? He was literally coaching his son's high school team. I believe he was coaching high school football. Reports have come out that he had been staying in great touch with Shane Steichen. They run the same offense as Shane Steichen. They talk regularly. But it is – I don't know how it's going to pan out, but every once in a while, the wide world of sports drops just a fun story. Drops just a story that you're just like, you know what? Who cares? Yeah, their season is floundering. They don't have any other options. Let's bring a guy who hasn't played in 4 years. That is literally his children have children. I would love to know if he's going to be the first grandpa to ever play in the NFL. Certainly has to be one of them, right? Like that. If he's not the first, that's got to be a great short list. And I hope he plays, and I hope he wins, because it would be so cool. We watch sports for our fandom and for cool things to happen. Because in a world that it seems more and more things are scripted, reality TV was supposed to be a look into real life. And what do we get? We just get scripted bull junk every single week. In a world where it feels like everything is scripted and scripted and scripted, it's cool to see that the one thing that continues to surprise us is sports. And I hope Phillip Rivers comes out with the Colts. They win a couple games. I know their odds to make the postseason have plummeted since the Daniel Jones injury. And they obviously got rid of Anthony Richardson's out for the year, and they just don't have a whole lot of options. So I hope it works out. It is a really neat thing. I don't have a take beyond that. I think it's just a really cool thing, and I hope it works. Like, it would be awesome to see Phillip Rivers come out, play. I don't think he's not going to play this week. Come out next week and throw 3 touchdowns, 350 yards. That would be one of the coolest stories ever. It's not the same as Kurt Warner coming off from bagging groceries to winning the MVP, but it's in the same field as that. Your thoughts on Phillip Rivers coming back?
Yeah, it's a feel-good story, right? And I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, every once in a while, if you follow sports, whether it be football or a different sport, a story will drop, and you're like, that's just kind of fun, right? The Indianapolis Colts, over the course of the past few weeks, I mean, it's been a fall from grace from them. They looked like this team. They're dominating the AFC. Daniel Jones looks like, oh my goodness, like Daniel Jones can actually play quarterback. And then they've had some injuries. They made the trade for Sauce Gardner, and that appears to be kind of blowing up in their face as their quarterback. He's playing with a broken leg. He pops his Achilles. All of a sudden, Sauce Gardner goes down. You just gave up 2 first-round picks for him. So they're kind of in a tailspin right now, and they're in desperation mode. And as you mentioned, Phillip Rivers, cerebral his brain capacity. He's definitely there and can ready to still play football. He mentioned several months ago on a show that he was on. He's like, yeah, he can still go out there and throw it around a little bit. Yeah, we'll see how he does against the Seahawks. When you take a look at this schedule, if he plays against the Seahawks, I think you're right. He probably won't, but I think the plan probably is for him to play the Niner game. The Colts schedule is as follows: Seahawks, Niners, Jaguars, Texans. And, the Seahawks defense and the Texans defense, those are two of the best in the National Football League. So I think you're a little bit worried for his well-being a little bit. Not completely out of the ordinary. Tom Brady, of course, played at 44, but Phillip Rivers, never a mobile guy anyway. You got to wonder what his arm still looks like, but he's got to be kind of a statue in the pocket. He signed at their practice squad, but I think the plan is if you do a signing like this, this isn't like the Bengals bringing in A.J. McCarron where you just want him in the room. I feel like if you're bringing back Phillip Rivers, who he's not a Hall of Famer in my opinion, but he's a legend.
It's close to
right?
it, right?
He's a legend. I think you want him to play quarterback for your team. We'll see. Riley Leonard, of course, the kid from Notre Dame. He's banged up as well, along with Jones, who's obviously out, and Anthony Richardson. So it's a fun story. I wouldn't anticipate it going very well just because, just look at the optics of it. He just hasn't been playing. He's been coaching. He's 44. And he's going to play against some ferocious defenses in the NFL. But I'm rooting for him. I'm pulling for him. It's fun to get him back because we always talk about this new age of football where, I miss guys like Brady and both the Mannings and Breeze. I don't miss Big Ben, but I think football fans might a little bit. Phillip Rivers is kind of in that category. And the fact that he's coming back and going to try to play here at 44, I'll tap in. I'll see what's going on. And it's certainly very interesting and certainly wish him the best.
Well, there's people in town when Joe got hurt throughout. Why the Bengals should call up Tom Brady, make him say no, and you just laugh at that. But it shows that there's still capacity to get guys that have competed their entire life to you ring that phone, and they just were like, you know what, I'm not gonna play, but thanks for thinking of me. Thanks for thinking of me because it's gotta be a cool thing. So we'll see. Next mailbag.
Reader and Stone, Ellie De La Cruz is playing for the Dominican Republic in the World Baseball Classic. What do you make of your favorite players playing in exhibition games just before the season? That comes in from Scooter Braun.
Ooh, Swifty's going to be coming at us. World Baseball Classic. It's this year. It is what I truly believe it is an extraordinary event. I think that it has the juice to continue to grow as it has the last few years or the last few times that they've competed in it. I think a few years ago, that final scene of Shohei pitching to Mike Trout, you can't script better drama than that. Best two players in the sport going at each other, teammates. You can't script better action than that. And it's going to continue to grow. If you've never watched the World Baseball Classic, if you're a baseball fan, I highly suggest it. And more than anything, I haven't seen the pools, but if the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico play against each other, electric. Almost more electric than any World Series game you've ever watched. Because it arguably means more for those two natives, for those two countries or their natives. Or I guess Puerto Rico is not its own country, but a territory of the United States. They get to play in the World Baseball Classic all the same. So what, Mike, the question is do you want your players to play? Because they play right before the season. And this is a constant conversation about, like, are these teams cool with these players playing? Are you, as a fan, cool with Ellie De La Cruz playing in the World Baseball Classic, putting him on a pedestal and letting the rest of the world watch? It's scary. Edwin Diaz, a few years ago, celebrating after a win, has a season-ending injury. Doesn't pitch for the rest of the year. Coming off the season where he's the best closer in the league. Jose Altuve, I think, in the last World Baseball Classic, broke a bone. He had some injury where he's gone for a couple months. It's a real thing. It's not just a fugazi that they might get hurt. It is a very real thing that players can get hurt in the World Baseball Classic. But I'll say this. I said it a few years ago. If you're a fan of baseball, this is good for the sport. This is good for continuing to grow the market to where someday there can be a market share amongst the teams the same way that the NFL has and make it more equity across the league. If it's the rising tides raise all ships model. And I'm kind of getting pushed to the brim here. I think Reds fans should be excited to see Ellie De La Cruz. The general consensus, and I'm rambling here, is that you want your position players to play and you don't want your pitchers to pitch because you don't want your pitchers going full-blown in March. but you're cool with your position players getting like real live ABs before the season starts. It's a risk. There's no doubt about it. But I think as fans, you want to. And as I mentioned, as a Cubs fan, I'm getting pushed to the brim here because Pete Crow Armstrong's playing, Matthew Boyd's playing, Shota Imanaga's likely going to play. I don't think he's been committed yet. Seiya Suzuki's going to play for Japan. We likely will see Jameson Taillon pitch for Canada, and I don't know, Michael Busch, or I don't think the Team USA has a first baseman yet. I don't know. It's really scary. I do wonder how many Reds players are going to play. Obviously, Ellie comes to the list. Hunter Green would be accepted in a second for Team USA. I don't think he's going to play for Team USA. Someone tell me in the chat if there's another Red that is already committed. Off the top of my brain, I can't think of any Canadians or anything like that. Noelve Marte might play for the DR. I think he's probably good enough to make the roster. So it's a good thing to show Ellie De La Cruz on a high pedestal. Just cross your fingers that nothing bad happens. And who knows? He might be more ready to play this year and might have the best year of his career just because he got important. Like, he's going to play in big-time games for the DR. Like, they're going to make the semifinals, maybe even the finals. Like, you're going to play in high-impact games to where if the Reds are going to play in October again, you want Ellie to have that type of experience. This is something you probably have never thought a whole lot about, wanting your favorite players to play in the World Baseball Classic. I don't know if you have a take on that.
Yeah, I don't have an issue at all with Ellie playing. He's one of the stars, not just in this town, but in the sport of baseball. And I think if you're a fan of baseball, you should tap into the World Baseball Classic a little bit, and the stars should be out there playing. I agree from a pitching standpoint. If Hunter Green was out there for Team USA, wouldn't love that. If Hunter Green had been healthy throughout the entirety of his career and was out there for Team USA, maybe wouldn't have as big of a problem with that. But, yeah, if Ellie blows out his knee, I'm going to have a different reaction. But for now, it's fine. And I think your last point there is the biggest one. If you want to get back to the postseason and have those type of at-bats and have those type of moments, well, you can come up with those moments in the World Baseball Classic. I mean, people take this very, very seriously. The environments there are through the roof. It feels like a playoff atmosphere. And, that was kind of the knock on the Reds. I think they ran into a buzzsaw with the Dodgers, but also most of their guys are sitting there like, oh, my goodness, we're in the playoffs. Like, what the heck's going on? They can give you some experience. And that's kind of been the knock on Ellie, in my opinion, is people complain about his errors, whatever. That's, would like to see that get cleaned up a little bit more. But I would like to see one of the best players and one of the most talented players have that clutch gene. And Ellie doesn't really have that. I mean, you're talking about, I know you're not a Spencer Steer guy, but he's the most clutch guy on your team. You would like that to change a little bit, and you would like Ellie to probably fill those shoes. So I think it'd be good experience for him. Again, if he gets hurt, we're all, have a different take there. But I think it's good for the game, good for Ellie, good for the Cincinnati Reds as well that he's playing.
I'm just looking at the tournament format here. The Dominican Republic, they'll play against Venezuela, the Netherlands, Israel, and Nicaragua. I can't imagine Nicaragua having a good team, but Israel, I think's head coach is a local guy, Kevin Youkilis. Hold me to that. I'm pretty sure Kevin Youkilis is the head coach for Israel. The Netherlands obviously get a lot of players from Curacao. They're normally a kind of feisty team. Venezuela, they've previously, I can't think of any great Venezuelan players that currently play. I believe Pudge was from there. Miguel Cabrera was from Venezuela. They normally have one or two really high-end players, but the DR just has too much depth. And then they'll be playing against, if they get through their pool, they'll be playing against Japan, who's probably the favorite to win it all. So it'd be really, really cool player. We're not going to get to see the DR versus Puerto Rico unless they play in the championship. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Man, USA got a great pool. Next question.
Stony Baloney and Reader Peter. With the Reds getting wiped away in the Schwarber sweepstakes, the news has broken that the Reds won't go after big-time free agents, but it does say they'll go after the guys like Ketel Marte and Brandon Lowe in the trade market. What do you think of the legs going after them? That comes in from Phil Rizzuto, a.k.a. the Scooter.
Oh, the Yankee great, the Scooter. Man, we're having a lot of scooters mail into the mailbag. Brandon Lowe or Ketel Marte. Obviously, both players would drastically help the Reds. Ketel Marte is the best second baseman in the league. I don't think he's 32 years old.
Over Jonathan India?
Over Nico Horner. Ketel Marte is the best second baseman in the league. And Brandon Lowe obviously is a good bat. Plays first base, hits left-handed. Here's my cause for concern. Obviously, the Reds, as they currently sit, are not good enough to compete at a very high level unless you're seeing extraordinary seasons from Elly De La Cruz, Noel Marte, from Matt McClain going back to 2023. Unless like you're getting really exceeding expectations kind of a player, you're not going to see those players really – you're not going to see the Reds take a major step forward. So they're going to need to add to the team like they just tried to do with Kyle Schwarber. I'll give 2 causes for concerns. And if they get either one of these players, I think you should be excited. 2 causes for concerns for trading for either Ketel Marte or Brandon Lau is thus. Because Ketel Marte is one of the best players in the league, he's got a 16 WAR over the last 3 seasons, which is likely top 5 in the league. He's the best second baseman. He is 32. The package that you're going to have to put together to get Ketel Marte is going to scare you Reds fans. It is going to scare you Reds fans to where you're going to wonder, oh, man, I don't know if that's going to work out. To wait and see. Like, it's not going to be just open excitement. Be like, oh, we got Ketel Marte. It's going to be you're going to be trading away one of your star pitchers or some young talent. So that should scare you. Secondly, when it comes to Brandon Lau and the Rays, a general rule of thumb when being a front office person in Major League Baseball is be extraordinarily cautious when trading with the Tampa Bay Rays because they have an incredible track record of swindling you, of winning out against you. So just be very cautious and be certain that you are making a good deal when trading with the Rays. It's kind of like if we got any poker players in here, I'm not a great poker player. I have played some home games before. And one guy at the table is just a better poker player than you. He's just better at it. But you like your hand and you're playing in the pot and you're like, you feel pretty confident. But there's always that thing in the back of your mind being like, man, am I getting played here? Is he going to kick my tail? He's a better poker player than me, but do I have a good enough hand to beat him? Just be cautious when it comes to the Reds. Or the Rays. If you bring in Ketel Marte, you're going to be scared of the package that you send out there. Brandon Lau's not going to cause as much of a package, but just be concerned about dealing with them in jest. But obviously the Reds need to make same moves, and trading's their best way of doing that. So that's my overall thoughts on it. I don't know if you have anything to add on there.
What did Ketel hit last year,
Ketel Marte hit last year 283.
Okay. How many pumps?
28 bombs.
Okay.
He finished 3rd in MVP voting 2 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. No, obviously he's a tremendous player, and I wouldn't be mad if you got a tremendous player on your team. But for me, it's like, as you mentioned, you definitely would have to give up one of your arms in order to get him. And I don't know if that's kind of what Cincinnati needs right now. I don't know if that's not enough home runs. I mean, 28, the Reds would take 28 home runs, but you're going to have to give up a lot to get a player like Ketel Marte. He's an unbelievable player. I understand that. But at this point, after missing on Schwarber, I might just hang on to the rotation and see if you can't get, an Austin Hayes type of bat, which it feels like that's the direction they're going to go in. I know that's not exciting. I know people don't want to, pop champagne about that, but I just think it'd be kind of a safer play just to keep the pitching that you have in place. But, if they go out there and make a move like that, we all should get excited and be like, okay, they're going out, they're trying something, they're making a trade. But I don't know if it's completely worth it because I agree, especially with Marte, the package is going to be pretty significant.
When talking about Brandon Lau, last year he hit 31 home runs in 135 games. The 2 years prior, he played less than 110 games, and had hit 20 home runs in each of those years. So playing at Great American Ballpark, not that Tropicana is that pitcher friendly, because it's not. It's a pretty hitter friendly park, especially for left-handed bats. He will fare very well here. Ketel Marte is obviously the much higher player. Brandon Lau, I think, fits the team a little better, especially for the package that you would have to put together to trade for him. I don't know what that looks like. I'm just telling you, be cautious when trading with the Rays. Next question.
All right, off the bench, there has been a lot of discourse in regards to the CFP. We are in year 2 of the 12-team playoff. Change is likely on the horizon, but point blank, do you think it's been successful thus far? Lee Corse, the Sunshine Scooter.
Lee Corso.
Yes, sorry.
The Sunshine Scooter. That was a typo from the mailbag. He signed his name wrong. He's getting old. Here's the thing about the college football playoff. There will continue to be so much discourse. There will continue to be every year people complaining and moaning about the way that they select players until it is out of the hands of the committee. And even if people are like, show us a roadmap, show us what it takes to get in, there will still be complaining because you know why? You're basing it off of the opinions of others. Bunch of guys get in a room and they go, well, we think this is who should play in the college football playoff. So in that capacity, I think you will always, always, always have people complaining unless you either just make it to where there's not an opinion base, you do it computer system, whatever it is, to where you're getting out of objective and you make it subject or whatever. Until you do that, it'll continue to have complaints. That being said, I think, and I said this yesterday on the show, I think the purpose of expanding the postseason was always not worrying about who the 12th team in the country is or the 10th or the 11th team in the country is. It was always about the 5th team, the team that barely got out of the 4-team playoff that had a real shot to make the college football championship or compete for it. Those were the teams that they were feeling bad about leaving out. I don't care about Notre Dame. I didn't think they had a real shake. Yeah, they're probably better than a couple teams, certainly better than the two non-power teams. But yeah, they probably had a better shake than some teams in the college. But I don't care because the point of it was always to just expand it to have the 5th and 6th best team in the college football playoff, have a chance to compete for the title. It was never about these 12 teams. That was just a method, a mode to the madness. So I do think it's been successful in that. And I think there's always going to be complaints as long as you have subjective opinions on this. As long as you have the committee, even if they give you a roadmap, even if they tell you this is exactly how you do it, if at the end of the day they are sitting down and just deciding it at whim, you're going to have complaints about it. My thoughts.
Yes, it's been a success. No, it's not perfect. No, it's not close to being perfect. They made changes after year 1. Remember Boise State getting a bye? What the heck was all that about? And they're going to make changes again after year 2, but it's way more compelling than it once was. There's way more teams that have an ability to actually go out there and win a national title. Or there's still some teams that are on the outside looking in that feel like they deserve a chance. Yes, but I don't care how far you expand this thing. There's always going to be teams out there that think the same way additionally. But yeah, I think, even with the 4-team playoff, bowls were kind of losing their value, and you saw lots of players opting out, even if it was a big-time bowl, and bowls are going to continue to do that as, you have 12 teams in the playoff. That's just something you're going to have to deal with, although there are several compelling bowl matchups that don't involve the college football playoff that, people that like college football are still going to tap into. But, yeah, they need to make some adjustments. Sitting there with James Madison and Tulane in Texas and Vandy and Notre Dame out doesn't feel right. That's the way it's set up right now. We'll see if they make some adjustments. But, yeah, this is way better than the 4-team playoff. And, the first round might not be that great this year, but the quarterfinals are going to be absolutely awesome. And if you love college football, you're looking forward to it.
Next mailbag.
All right. Nicholas and Michael. Not sure who that is.
First
okay.
Names.
Yes. So the shootout has come and passed. Both Xavier and UC aren't very good, but are you holding on to any hope that either one can make some noise in their respective conference? That comes in from Razor, the scooter.
Oh, Razor scooters.
Yeah.
Love it. No. I don't know what else to say. I said before the game, I thought that this was going to be the highlight for both teams or the low light for whichever team lost it. I think there is a world with the talent that they have that UC can upset someone of prominence in the Big 12. But I think based off of what I've seen Wes Miller do as a coach, that when they come to play in the Big 12, they will be near the bottom. I just don't think they are consistent enough to do it. And obviously Xavier doesn't have the roster. If you want the sunshine, like Lee Corso, the sunshine scooter, if you want the sunshine, I'll say this about Xavier. The Big East isn't very good. Well, their roster might not be very good. The Big East isn't very good, so they could be middle of the pack. But no, I don't think when it comes to tournament selection time, when we get to the conference tournaments in March, I don't think we're going to be getting there and talking about, you know what? This Xavier team's right on the cusp. You know what? This Bearcats team's right on the cusp. No, I don't think either team's going to make a lot of noise. I do think that there will be one game this year that the Bearcats win, and you're like, oh, man, one of the best wins in Wes Miller's era. But over the course of the year, yeah, they're not going to be at near the top of the Big 12. Stone?
UC definitely not. And to your point, I think Xavier has a chance just because how bad the Big East is. Connecticut's going to run away with the conference, but like Seton Hall, they're hot right now. Are they really that good? Probably not. St. John's has had a couple losses. I think when the dust settles, they'll be at the very top. But as far as being a middle of the pack team, can you compete with a team like a Butler, right? Creighton's having a down year. Can you compete with them? I think you got to be a little bit optimistic, especially with how they have improved as the weeks have gone on, right? I don't think, many people thought they would be where they're at right now based on how things started for the first game. So Pitino deserves a lot of credit for that, and we'll see. But they have a much better chance than UC. UC's cooked in the Big 12.
I mean, you look at the Big East, like St. John's good, UConn's good. That it?
Yeah, I mean, Seton Hall is going to come back down to life.
Seton Hall, Georgetown, DePaul, Creighton. Like, you have confidence in any of those teams? Because I certainly don't. So, I mean, yeah, it can be exciting. I just don't think that Xavier has the roster to compete consistently. Next question.
OTB. The Bengals season is effectively over. You are the head of football operations. Ooh. What is your wish list this offseason? That comes in from Scooter the Muppet.
Oh, the Muppets. Here's what would I do? What is my wish list for the Bengals this offseason? I think if I'm making a list to Santa, and he's going to check it twice, figure out if I'm naughty or nice, the number one thing that I want is for them to hire a legitimate general manager. I don't even need to see Duke Tobin go. I would prefer it. I think it has just cause. But the number one thing that I want to see is for the Bengals and the year of our Lord 2025, 56 years into the franchise's existence, them to finally go into the 21st century. And I know we have the de facto GM, but I'm tired of saying de facto on this show. I'm tired of when I'm talking about the Bengals saying the word de facto. I want a general manager. I don't want them to just change Duke Tobin's role either. I just want them to bring someone else in to oversee this whole thing. How we are evaluating players, how we are bringing them in, what we're offering. I just need another voice in the room that currently isn't there. That's number one. And I don't think that's the toughest ask in the world. I mean, yeah, you're going to have to spend some money, Mike Brown, Katie Blackburn. You're going to have to spend a couple $1 million on that. But I promise you that if you make a decent hire, the returns on that investment will go through the roof. Second thing I want to do. Second thing that I would have behind that is if John Harbaugh or Mike Tomlin are available in the coaching market. I know that they're comfortable because we see them twice a year. I know they've had success. But if there is those two guys, they get fired because the Ravens don't make the postseason and the Steelers do, and they get bounced by 30 points again in the first round. If that happens and they're both fired or both let go or both move on, whatever it is, I want to see the Bengals make a legitimate chase after that. Because I've said this before, I don't think there is a better return, ROI, better return on investment in this sport than good coaching. I don't know how. I think coaches across the board in the NFL are underpaid. The top guys are getting $15 million. We're paying Trey Hendrickson $30 to play 7 games. We're paying T. Higgins $30 or whatever he's getting paid to be our second wide receiver. Do you think that Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers, who's getting about $15 million, I don't know the exact numbers, we'll say $15 million, you think they're getting a better return on investment for their $15 million than we are with T.J. Slayton and Mike Gesicki? Abso-freaking-lutely. And I want to see the Bengals make a legitimate chase after those two. If it's not one of those two, then I'm cool with Zach Taylor coming back because I understand what the offense is. And it's really, really good. And if you just hope that the defense. So that's my wish list. Bring in someone new. You don't even have to fire Duke Tobin. You have to bring in a general manager and usher this Bengals team into the 21st century and have someone new have a different voice, because clearly the voices that are being heard when they're making big decisions in free agency and early draft picks or draft picks in general is not good. So I just need someone else there. Stone, I don't know if you have a wish list.
Yeah. Get a general manager. I agree. I think we see eye to eye on that. You want to keep Duke Tobin in the organization, fine, but, give him a different personnel role. Bring in somebody to be his boss, be the GM. Bring in some young, up-and-coming executive at a successful organization, the Niners, the Eagles, somewhere along those lines. And trust me, there will be people that would want to be the general manager of the Cincinnati Bengals and try to build around Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. You didn't mention trading Joe Burrow on your wish list, so that was good. I was happy to hear that. But then trading up for somebody in the draft, I think, is also what I would like to do. Caleb Downs. If you can get Caleb Downs, would absolutely love that. A mock draft from ESPN came out this morning, and the Rams, by the way, are going to get a top 10 pick, it looks like, because they're going to have the Falcons pick. And I saw the mock draft as the Rams taking Downs at 9 and the Bengals drafting at 10. Well, if you're in a spot where you have a pick and Caleb Downs is still on the board, right, you trade up with that team, do whatever the heck you can to get Caleb Downs. He's a player that can transcend your defense the second he comes here. So, what are you laughing at?
It's just yuck. The idea of bringing someone from that satanic cult into this fold just
he's a dog.
Yeah, he's like Cerberus guarding the gates of hell. And that's the dog he is. Yuck. We got a few more mailbags, but we won't.
No, real quick, the last one.
Okay.
Friends.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
I'm sure you've been asked this before, but who are the top 5 quarterbacks in the league at this very moment for you? Reed Mouse. Comes in from Bird Scooters, by the way.
Oh, the brand.
Yeah.
A lot of scooters here. Who are the top 5 quarterbacks in the league right now? Reed's top 5 quarterbacks in the league. Number 1, Josh Allen. Number 2, Joe Burrow. Number 3, I'm still going Patrick Mahomes. Number 4, Justin Herbert. Number 5, he's shown me too much in the past. I know he sucks right now. Lamar Jackson. That's my 5. I think you probably disagree with the bottom 2.
In the top 2. I'll give you a chance to redo that if you want, real quickly. There's an old guy in L.A. He's playing really well.
Oh, yeah. Phillip Rivers, number 5.
Okay. All right. Burrow 1, Allen 2, Mahomes 3, Stafford 4. And I can't – it says right now. That's what the question says. This very
Correct.
moment.
It is right now. Stafford should be in there.
Yeah.
You can't put Lamar in there. You're actually right.
You say actually like you're surprised.
Well, yeah, you're not right very often.
Okay. I'll go J-Lo at 5.
Jordan Love.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any hope that Caleb Williams will be a top 5 quarterback in the next 2 years?
No.
Okay. Doesn't complete enough passes. But, man, you talk about, I don't know, a good idiom for it, so I'll just use the cliche, horsepower. There ain't better. I mean, I know he makes a lot of mistakes, but Caleb Williams, when he makes a play, man, it's something special sometimes. Jordan Love has that too. Jordan Love certainly has that too. I don't think the sport's ever been as good of a spot as it's been right now in terms of quarterbacks. I truly believe that. Drake May's not too far off there. I mean, Jaden Daniels was near my top 5 based off what we saw last year. Yeah. He's obviously been hurt this entire year. Yeah. Yeah, yours was closer probably than mine. But thanks so much to all the scooters that mailed in. From the Sunshine Scooter to Phil Rizzuto, the scooter, to the Bird Scooters, and Scooter Braun, and Scooter Jeanette, and Razor Scooters. Thank you guys so much. This has been a fun show. We have some fun guests potentially on the show tomorrow, so be sure to tune in. Be sure to tune in early and check our socials for who those guests might be. The Stone Shield Show coming up right now.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are here. We are live. It is Wednesday, December 10th. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us here this morning. Lots to get to on today's show. No guests today. We are going to have a guest tomorrow, so be on the lookout for the news surrounding that. Make sure you check our socials. Follow us, our Chatterbox sports Twitter page over on Twitter. Also follow the show as well at the Stone Shields on Twitter. Follow me as well at Stone Shields _. Lots of good stuff up there and lots of updates as well. But we will have a guest on the show tomorrow. Looking forward to that. And no guest today, but there is a lot of ground that we need to cover. When we were live yesterday, Kyle Schwarber actually ended up agreeing to a deal with the Philadelphia Phillies. He's going to stay put in Philadelphia. And the Reds, I think, were a lot closer than a lot of people wanted to give them credit for. I think a lot of people thought it was kind of a pipe dream to begin this whole free agent process, but I think the Reds were a real contender here for Kyle Schwarber, but they do come up a little bit short as it relates to that. I have my thoughts on Schwarber going back to Philadelphia and kind of thoughts from a Reds angle on that there as well. Also, we'll break down some key plays in the Bengals versus Bills game because, at first, kind of tearing apart the defense for their performance, but you kind of go back and you look through the game and you go, okay, defense wasn't good. Defense certainly cost them the football game, but I think they were a little bit better than maybe we thought live watching the game, but there were several key plays, and Trags, friend of the show, wrote about this for CLNS Media, CLNSCincy.com, that the Bengals didn't make on those key plays, and that ultimately is what swung the game in Buffalo's favor, besides, of course, the 2 fourth-quarter interceptions from Joe Burrow. We'll talk about that. Some more takeaways from the Bengals game, and also some T. Higgins conversation as he hit his head several times. And you never like to see that, period, but especially when you have a guy coming off a concussion. So we'll talk about T. Higgins. Don't expect him to play Sunday against Baltimore at all. In fact, I would be shocked if he did. But if the Bengals lose that game, you might be in a situation where, you sit him down the rest of the year and kind of see him in 2026. But valiant effort from T. Higgins in the game against Buffalo. Tremendous player. Called himself a soldier after the game, and he absolutely is. So I was really impressed with what T. Higgins brought to the table. But we'll talk about him and his health a little bit on the show as well. News of sports right now, certainly news of the NFL. Phillip Rivers, 44 years of age. He just was signed to the Indianapolis Colts practice squad, and I've got some thoughts on that. It's a feel-good story, right? And every once in a while in sports, you get these, right? Kind of random out of nowhere, but it's like, that's a fun story. It's fun to talk about, and you're certainly a lot more interested to watch the Indianapolis Colts going forward. Don't expect him to start Sunday. Maybe he does. We'll see. And I don't think there's a guarantee that he ever starts for Indianapolis, but when you make a decision like that, it feels like it's kind of trending in that direction. 44 years of age, as I mentioned. He is a grandfather. His kid already has a kid. Right, he's got a bunch of kids, but that's pretty crazy that you might see a guy starting in the NFL that has a grandfather. Tom Brady, of course, did play at the ripe age of 44 as well, and we'll see if ultimately Phillip Rivers does that for the Indianapolis Colts and how he plays if he has an opportunity to get out there on the field. Also, we'll talk about the catch rule in the NFL. It's, there's several frustrating things about the NFL. The NFL is great. We all love watching it. Peak entertainment, right? But there's a couple of things that make you scratch your head, and a lot of it has to do with officiating. And if you're a Baltimore Raven fan, you've got to be all worked up about how that game ended against the Pittsburgh Steelers, because it looked like a pretty clear touchdown for Isaiah Likely to me, and ultimately they say, nope, that's not a touchdown. Those points get taken off the board, and ultimately it ends up costing Baltimore the football game. So we'll talk about that. I've got some thoughts on that as well. And also, I'm going to do a Super Bowl bubble. There's a lot of people that talk sports for a living that do these, and I'm going to do it as well. I've got 7 teams as things stand right now on December 10th that I believe can win a world championship, and we'll break down some of those teams, and we'll also mention the teams that aren't in the bubble that maybe some other people think should be in the bubble. And we'll wrap up today's show with that as well. Not crazy college basketball tonight. Had a nice game last night. A couple of nice games. Florida, UConn. UConn edges Florida. People have kind of written Florida off a little bit. Are they as good as last year? No, but they have a lot of the same pieces back. What a great ending to the BYU-Clemson game as well. Rob Wright hitting the game-winning 3 after missing a free throw. Really did a nice job responding, bouncing back from that. That was a good game. But, Florida's kind of played a bit of a gauntlet here. They had to go to Cameron and played Duke, lost by 1 point. That's nothing to hang or get too down and out about, right? And then, of course, the game last night against UConn. UConn's a really, really good team. They've got a lot of good players back, got a good freshman. Solo Ball's back, Caravan, two-time champion, great coach, who's a little bit crazy, but Hurley certainly can coach men's college basketball. So a couple of good games last night. Not too many good games tonight. Ohio State, by the way, lost again. That program is in shambles over there up in Columbus. Very much a one-dimensional football school up in Columbus, which really is a disaster considering how much resources and things of that nature that they have, the facilities, what have you. Should be a heck of a lot better, but they are not a good basketball team. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking college basketball. Tomorrow's going to be a heavy college basketball day, so looking forward to that on the show. As always, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. We are like just a couple of subscribers away from 21,000 here at the channel, so help us out. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/Chatterbox Sports. By the way, the boss was back, Trace Fowler. He did a podcast last night with Nick Kirby that went out early this morning. Check that out. We're going to talk Schwarber on the show. Reed was talking Schwarber on Off the Bench, but they went for like 50-ish minutes, close to an hour, I believe, kind of going back and forth on that. That is must-see content. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts or up on our YouTube page as well. As always, like the stream and subscribe to the podcast as well. We've seen some growth with our podcast and the numbers here at the show. Obviously, we started, in September, and it's kind of a slowly but surely progress. And help us out. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. I completely understand being busy from 11 to noon. You have real jobs out there. You're working. I understand that. But the podcast goes out in the afternoons. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. Help us out and subscribe to that. We certainly appreciate it. All right, let's start with Kyle Schwarber. The Reds apparently made an offer for Kyle Schwarber, 5 years, $125 million. And I've got a couple of reactions to how this whole Kyle Schwarber thing went down. There's something I'm happy about, there's something I'm sad about, and there's something I'm angry about. We'll start with what I'm happy about. Originally when this whole thing went down, people thought it was kind of a pipe dream, right, that the Reds would land Kyle Schwarber, and a lot of people around this city, around the team, kind of scoffed at the idea. Yeah, Cincinnati Reds, they don't have a real chance at bringing in a guy like Kyle Schwarber, who just hit 1 million home runs last year and is one of the best, if not the best, power bat in all of Major League Baseball and one of the most prized possessions in free agency this cycle. Surely the Cincinnati Reds can't actually go out and make a run for him. But they offered him 5 years, $125 million, right? You talk about these Cincinnati teams in the past, whether it be the Reds or the Bengals, where they offer these contracts, and it kind of is insulting, right? And, people that aren't millionaires and make a ton of money like that, you say, what do you mean insulting? But I mean, for a professional player that is elite, sometimes these organizations, the Reds and the Bengals, will make an offer that is borderline insulting. And I kind of expected things to go that way for Kyle Schwarber and the Cincinnati Reds. I didn't expect them to offer $100 million, to be completely honest with you. I thought they would offer something around the 80 million mark, and Schwarber's going to be like, I could literally almost double this somewhere else. What the heck are you doing? That's a disgrace. I'm out. They didn't handle it that way. They gave him 5 years, $125 million, which to me is a very, very fair deal. He ends up getting $150 from the Phillies, but I think there's a real world where Philadelphia is like, a couple of years from now, that was a horrible contract, and Kyle Schwarber kind of robbed us there a little bit. So I don't think 5 years, $125 million, that is a great offer for the Cincinnati Reds. Remember, this guy isn't playing the field. This is a guy that just hits, and he doesn't really just hit. He just hits bombs, right? I mean, he's not going to hit, for a high average. He's going to walk some, obviously, but he's not really a singles-doubles guy. It's either he's getting out or he's hitting the ball over the fence for the most part, or walking, certainly, there as well. So I thought it was a very fair offer from the Cincinnati Reds. He ends up taking the $150 million from the Philadelphia Phillies, and from his angle, I totally understand it, right? There's people out there that the phrase hometown discount has been floated around so often as it relates to Kyle Schwarber and the Cincinnati Reds, and maybe that would come into effect if it was a little bit closer, if the margins were a little bit slimmer, but $25 million, right? I get it. The idea of him coming to Cincinnati and the comments he made talking to Seg Dennison, Gordon Whitmire, and others here in this town when he came back to Middletown had people's hopes get up. But to turn down $25 million and play for a team that, just if we're being completely honest, has a lesser chance at winning a world championship than the team in which you're on right now, the Philadelphia Phillies, I wouldn't have made that move, right? I love the Cincinnati Reds. I'm a Cincinnati guy. It would be awesome to play for the Cincinnati Reds, but this is the last time he's going to get a huge contract, and he has an opportunity to do it with a team that is better and has won more games and has had more success, and they're going to give you $25 million more, and you don't even have to, like, you've been in this town for several years. I probably would have made the same decision. So I don't understand why people are banging on him for taking the money, right? It's easy for us to sit here and say, oh, come on, come home. But if you were offered $25 million, right, that's not $25. That's not $2,500. Shoot, that's not $25,000. $25 million. That is a ton of money. And I don't bang on Schwarber at all for taking it. So that's something I'm happy about. Again, just where my bar of expectations are for the Cincinnati Reds and this team, I did not expect them to make that kind of an offer. It's a fair offer. That is a great offer for Kyle Schwarber, and at the end of the day, it wasn't enough, and they got outbid for him. But, if they would have forked up $150 million and he didn't hit 50-plus nukes for several years, it would be kind of a disaster for the Cincinnati Reds. So now my question is, how exactly did this whole thing go down? And, there's been reports that he went to the ballpark, sat down with Tito, sat down with Castellini, sat down with the front office. His wife was there, and they kind of hashed some things out. So I definitely think there was real interest from Schwarber. And, maybe if the Reds offered 150, maybe he would have came. But ultimately, that didn't end up transpiring. And I would love to know how, things went. If it was, okay, the Reds offered 125, Philly offered 150, and the Reds, he called the Reds back and was like, hey, I just got 150. What are you thinking here? Could you do that? And the Reds were like, oh, no. Or if he just got the 150 from Philadelphia and ultimately went from there. But I think overall it's disappointing and it's sad that you weren't able to land him. But from an effort perspective, it's a real deal for Cincinnati that they went out there and they gave a real effort. They didn't not some embarrassing offer, not some disrespectful offer. They gave him a great offer. They were willing to fork up over $100 million for this guy that doesn't even play the field. At the end of the day, he got a different offer elsewhere. I would be interested to know if Philly didn't give him 150. And it was just Baltimore that gave him 150. And if the Reds were given 125, what he would do in that situation. Because, again, $25 million, ton of money. I'm not going to bang on you at all for taking that money, right? But, Baltimore as an organization, they won a lot of games a couple of years ago. Last year it was a mess. They fired their manager, right? There's no familiarity with there, right? It's not like he had played there for several years like he did with Philadelphia. So I'd be interested to know what he would do if it was Baltimore 150, Reds 125. Ultimately, we'll never know the answer to that question. I also think from a Philadelphia perspective, there was no way they were going to let him go. Right, and Reed talked about this on and off the bench, whereas teams in the past had let Schwarber go, and I think we're kind of kicking themselves each time they let him go, right? The Cubs, they would love to still have him right now, right? He could have played his whole career with the Chicago Cubs. Chicago didn't handle the situation that way. He was with Washington, ultimately he was traded to Boston. Boston probably is like, you know what, we could use him, right? With pesky pole there, and right field, hit a lot of home runs in Boston. They kind of had a nice little playoff run with a short time there as well. But then he gets to Philadelphia. They have a ton of success. They win a ton of games. He hits a ton of home runs. I didn't think Philadelphia was in a spot where they wanted to let him go and make that same mistake. And they're looking at the rest of the National League. And Philadelphia, of course, can outbid teams, right? But they're trying to compete with the Dodgers. And in my opinion, when I look at baseball in the National League, it's obviously the Dodgers at the top. But the Phillies, to me, are kind of that next team. Right, when you talk about the ballpark, the support they have from their fan base, and you just watch a Philly game on TV, the vibes there, it's just always, it feels bigger than watching a game at a different place, right? And they have the star power there, right, with Turner and Harper. The list kind of goes on there with the guys they have, and they weren't ready to, give up on Schwarber and let him walk, because that's a lot of production, that's a lot of home runs, and that leads to a lot of wins too for Philadelphia. So I don't blame them at all for doing everything in their power to keep him. And it's kind of interesting. Trace brought up this point as well. Is there kind of a pride element to this when you're talking about Philadelphia? Because they weren't competing with the Dodgers here in this spot, or the Yankees, or a division rival, the Mets, right? They're competing with the Reds. And if you're the Philadelphia Phillies and you're sitting down as a front office and as personnel group and saying, is this really, we're getting in a bidding argument or a bidding war with who? The Reds? We can't let them outbid us. That would be absolutely embarrassing. And I think there's probably an element to that, where Philadelphia is like, look, it's the Reds we're talking about. It's in the Dodgers, it's in the Yankees. It's a small market team who does not spend money at all. It'd be downright kind of embarrassing for Philadelphia if they got outbid by the Cincinnati Reds. It'd be interesting to know how far they would push the envelope, because it seemed like they were pretty bent on him staying around. Would they have gone more than $150 million? I think probably they would have, to be honest with you, because they really did not want him to leave. And then that kind of gets into the whole discourse about baseball and how, it doesn't seem like it's fully fair with these teams, not spending as much money or not having as much money as some of these other teams. That's a conversation for a different day. Though I will say if Skubal ends up being a Dodger, I'll have a real issue with that because, it's baseball. Anything could happen. You play all these games any given day. Snell, Yamamoto, Ohtani, right? The other Sasaki or whatever, the other closer, him, right? Glass now, and you add Skubal to that. With the lineup they have, come on, that would just be ridiculous. But kind of a side tangent there. But, look, the Reds went out and they said, you know what, we're going to put all of our chips on the table. And that's a move for Cincinnati where it's that's a big deal, right? If you're going to go out there and put that much money on the table, if you're the Cincinnati Reds, that is, again, this isn't the Dodgers here, right? This isn't the Mets where it's we can just recover. No, if you go all in like that and it doesn't work, you are in a world of trouble. And ultimately, Cincinnati falls a little bit short there. So there's a sadness element to it, right? Happy they gave a real effort, respectful proposal to Kyle Schwarber. And then there's the sadness of, man, right, what he could have done to this team, right? Because now it kind of feels like you're back in the same spot, and it feels like you're going to run this roster back a little bit, and it's going to be very similar to last year, and you're probably going to be in a similar spot where best case scenario, you're probably playing in the wild card round, right? And, the Reds were borderline lucky to be in the spot with the collapse of the Mets last year, but it feels like we're going to get a very similar team this year going into 2026. So there's the sadness element of, and it felt like it was trending in the right direction, right? Because originally I was like, this isn't going to happen. I had still said throughout the whole process that it was a 20% chance of happening, but then you got national people saying, the Reds are actually a factor here, and it's kind of building up, and all of a sudden comes crashing down. So there's a sadness element to it. You can be sad. As Cincinnati fans, we're accustomed to being very sad, regardless of which team we root for. And then there's the anger element. A report came out that Cincinnati's not going to pursue any other big-time free agents. That's not where I'm angry. I don't have a problem with that. Knowing the structure of this organization, the money that they have to work with, and the names that are on the market, I don't think it's worth it, to be honest with you. Would it be great to land Pete Alonso? Sure, he'd hit a lot of home runs. It'd be fun to have a big-time hitter like that in Cincinnati. But I don't think it's worth it because it would set you back so much, especially if you misfired on it. But the angry element is that they were just going after Schwarber because they thought it would help drive ticket sales. I tweeted this last night. I was like, this is real? Is this real? For a second, because, you see stuff on Twitter and you had AI and all people just make stuff up online, whatever. So I hardly believe anything I see initially until I do some research behind it. But it's like, oh, no, this is like a real report. Like people that cover Major League Baseball are actually saying this. And that makes me angry. In fact, it's downright embarrassing, right? If that was the driving force to signing Kyle Schwarber, how about the fact that he hit 50-plus nukes, right? And that's what you need. And he's a left-handed bat, and he's from the city, right? And he can lead to winning, which he definitely can for this team with the pieces that they have in place. You were doing it to drive ticket sales, and you're not going to pursue anyone else because they don't think they can drive ticket sales like that? And Reed brought this up on Off the Bench. Yeah, maybe it drives ticket sales for the first couple of months, but if you're losing games, it ain't driving ticket sales, right? Winning drives ticket sales. You see that in this town. When the Reds got hot, they started putting some more, bodies in the stands. And even then, it wasn't, full sellouts. They sell out on opening day, and there'll be some big-time games throughout the regular season on a Friday or Saturday night where they will as well. But for the most part, a single player coming in is not going to drive ticket sales. I don't care who it is, right? When Griffey came, ticket sales spiked the first year, and then, they didn't win many games the year after that, and they kind of went back down to earth, right? And that's kind of where it would be with Kyle Schwarber. So I did not like that reasoning at all. That made me angry. That's kind of embarrassing, and that's kind of just a slap in the face for Cincinnati fans, where it's like, really? Like, you go out there and you make this real offer and you get our hopes up, but it really was just because you thought it was going to drive ticket sales? Come on. That makes me a little bit angry, to be completely honest with you. And then the question is, could they have gotten more? Could they have gotten to the 150? There's like 20 other owners there as well. Could they have gotten their money together and made, a better offer? Maybe, probably, they could have done that. But at the end of the day, love Kyle Schwarber, would love him to be here, but you want to give him more than $125 million for a guy that doesn't play the field and the guy that strikes out a lot? I don't know. if I'm being completely honest here. So that's kind of my takeaways on the whole Kyle Schwarber situation. Then, we'll see where they go from here, right, when you're talking about the Cincinnati Reds. Wouldn't be surprised if they kind of said, well, you know what, offensively, we'll kind of run it back, which doesn't get you very excited considering how bad you were on offense last year. Kind of look to address the bullpen and maybe bring in another starting pitcher as well. And, there's things you could have done to, figure out how to pay Kyle Schwarber, right? Nick Kirby talked about this. You could trade a guy like Gavin Lux, trade a guy like Brady Singer, and, those losses would hurt, specifically the Singer loss, but it'd be worth it, right, to get Kyle Schwarber. So there were some things they could have done to make room, but at the end of the day, I don't know if I feel comfortable giving him more than $125 million, just knowing kind of the state of the organization as it is right now. So stuff to be happy about. They made an effort. Not sure we're ever going to see that effort again in free agency. Probably never will, right? Stuff to be sad about. Felt like you were closer than a lot of people initially thought. Weren't able to get there. And certainly stuff to be angry about as well, as unfortunately the Reds ownership group, front office, whatever you want to say, puts you in that situation seemingly more often than not. But my whole thing when we started the Kyle Schwarber discourse this offseason was, it's probably not going to happen here. But when this contract ends, I do think there's a real world where we see Kyle Schwarber as a Red. Now he's going to be approaching 40 years of age at that point. Who knows how many home runs he's going to hit. But I would say right now, if you asked me to put money on it, I think you'll see him play a game with the Cincinnati Reds before he's done playing baseball, in my opinion. I think that will happen. I kind of felt that before, but just kind of knowing where he was at with his career, this was his time to get that big-time money contract and really cash in after hitting all those home runs. He's doing it, and I think you'll see Kyle Schwarber eventually be a Cincinnati Red, but is he going to be any good at that point? Father Time catches up to everybody at some point, and, ultimately it will catch up to Kyle Schwarber. But I think he'll end his career or at least play some baseball here with the Cincinnati Reds. But what caliber of player will he be ultimately is going to be the question. All right, moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals. There's a couple of key plays that I wanted to talk about from the game against Buffalo. My initial takeaway, of course, is, wow, those two interceptions stunk from Joe Burrow as he was playing such a magical game leading up to that. And your second takeaway was like, God, the defense just kind of went back to old habits, right? Giving up big plays, not covering tight ends, did have the one turnover, but giving up, the chunk plays, giving up third and longs, right? Fourth downs as well. And you kind of go back and work through that game and realize that, there were some positive elements of the defense. They're playing fast. They're playing more physical. I think there were a lot of soft elements to this defense. The effort is definitely there. Al Golden, of course, talked about this. Thought the effort was great on Sunday. The results obviously were not. You forced the turnover, which is a huge play by DJ Turner, who obviously has made several throughout the course of the year, and that's more of a conversation topic, obviously, if you're able to hold on and win that game. Ultimately, it doesn't happen. But, the consistency, not nearly there with this group. But, again, the standard in which it is fair to hold this Bengals defense to, again, you can't hold them and expect them to be a top 10 defense. You expect them to be average, and average should be good enough considering what you have offensively. They were worse than average. They were below average in the game, and ultimately that's what cost them. But there were several plays that I wanted to detail where the Bengals defense did not come up in a big spot. And there's always, when you watch an NFL game, you can always break it down to about 5 or 6 plays that's like, oh, that's huge. That determined the outcome. We're not going to talk about the 2 interceptions, but there are, 5 plays that I want to discuss here on the show that kind of impacted the game significantly, and the Bengals defense was not able to make a play on any one of those plays. And I think that swung the game in favor of Buffalo, despite the fact that there was obviously the 2 interceptions from Burrow as well. The first couple of fourth downs, right, where Cincinnati had gotten off to a hot start, Buffalo on the first drive kicks the field goal, and they're in a situation where it's 14-3, and they can't mess around here. They got to go down, and they got to score touchdowns. It was a 4th and 4 play at the Cincinnati Bengals 45 in the second quarter, and the result was a Josh Allen pass to Gabe Davis for 17 yards. And it's always different stuff that kind of impacts the result of the plays. And this one, it was the pass rush didn't get home, right? And that is kind of a reoccurring theme for this team. Pass rush has been a little bit better. Cedric Johnson has shown some flashes. Osai has played better, right? Miles Murphy is coming along a little bit, believe it or not. But on this particular play on 4th down where you needed some disruption, Josh Allen had all day to throw. I believe it was Turner in coverage. It was fine. But in the NFL, if you ask guys to cover for more than a couple of seconds, somebody's going to get open. Davis was open. It keeps the drive alive. 4th and 4, huge conversion. If you get a stop there, and the Bengals did get a stop on 4th down late in the first half, which was huge. Weren't able to turn it into points, also critical as well. But if you can get a stop there and you're getting the ball with the optimal field position, you're already borderline stepping on their necks with a 14-3 lead, chances are you can overcome some of the turnovers that took place in the fourth quarter. So that was the first play, 4th and 4, Bengals 45. By the way, Trags, friend of the show, Mike Petralia, CLNSCincy.com, he broke these down. His column is up. Check out his Twitter, @Trags, and you can see kind of the whole breakdown here. Second one was also a 4th and 4, and it was at the Bengals 11. And this, to me, is just Josh Allen being Josh Allen. I'm not quite sure, maybe Mahomes, but other than those two guys, I don't think anybody, to be honest with you, is making this play. What Allen was able to do on the 2nd, 4th down of that drive, pass to Khalil Shakir, 11 yards, touchdown. The pass rush was kind of there. It allowed him to escape outside of the pocket, though. And, B.J. Hill was chasing him. There was some guys coming around the edge. I think Osai certainly factored into the play, but Allen, it's just Allen being exceptional. And I don't really knock the Bengals defense so much for not making this play as I do of just giving Josh Allen a ton of credit. But, I mean, he somehow threads it through both the linebackers, perfect throw, Shakir, touchdown, and they're right back in the game at that point. Again, if you come up with a stop there, when I break down that play, it's not really like, well, bad play by this guy, bad play by this guy. Really just a sensational play by Josh Allen, but a huge moment in the game on a huge down, 4th down, red zone, opportunity to make something happen, keep all the momentum in your favor, and you're not able to do it. Right, and it felt like you were just dominating the game to that point. 14-3, they had to go for it on 4th down already on the drive, and then boom, Allen responds. They get the 2-point. You look up and it's 14-11. You're like, dang, the Bengals are only up 3 here. It feels like we're dominating. Josh Allen brilliance, but a huge opportunity for the defense to do something on that play. Weren't able to do it. Next one is the play in the fourth quarter where it's 2nd and 10. Right, they had picked up some chunks on the drive. They were moving the ball, and we talked about this on Monday's show, where it was like, okay, Josh Allen's probably going to score. This is after the Gesicki touchdown. Bengals had a 10-point lead. Josh Allen's probably going to go down and score, right? Regardless of what defense he's going up against. Playing Seattle, probably going to go down and score. Houston, probably going to go down and score. Maybe not Houston, but you get my point. It's Josh Allen, probably going to go respond at home, fourth quarter, down 10, 4 downs to work with. He's probably going to go score points. But if Cincinnati had caused him in the offense to use a little bit more clock, for the time to tick a little bit more, it would have been okay, right? But no clock was used. They scored in like a minute. Gesicki scored, and then boom, the Bills scored, and you look up at the clock, it's like, well, that sucked, right? They went down and scored, and they didn't really waste any clock. They just went down the field immediately and did it. And of course, I'm talking about the 40-yard touchdown play, whereas Johnson brings some pressure, Cedric, and then Allen's easily able to evade him, and there was a huge hole, and then nobody he goes in untouched, 40 yards into the end zone. That can't happen. And to me, I point to Al Golden, and we'll get to the final play of the game as well, which I think reflects on Al Golden additionally. It's Josh Allen, right? It's not Phillip Rivers, right? It's not Jared Goff. Shoot, it's not Joe Burrow. Like, Josh Allen takes off. That's what he does, right? And they were like, oh, he's going to run here? I didn't think that was possible. 40 yards down the field, untouched, right? Again, 10 yards down the field, another first down, fine. 15 yards, 20 yards. Tackle him in the field of play, get a hand on him, and have an opportunity for more clock to tick. Because it kind of felt like that the Gesicki touchdown was like, whoa, the Bengals are really in control here. Like, even if Buffalo goes and scores, what if they take 4 or 5 minutes off the clock? You still feel solid about where you're at. They took less than 2 minutes off the clock. That was a huge play. An opportunity to make a play on defense. You weren't able to do it. So that's 3 here at this point. 2 more. You had the pick 6. Not good. And then you throw another pick as well. So you're kind of asking a lot of your defense here. And they rose to the occasion for the first couple of plays. It's 4th and goal. At the Bengals' 4-yard line. And what happens? A tight end beats you again. Another opportunity, right? Again, the Bengals had 1 successful play on 4th down on defense, but 3 huge conversions in this game for Buffalo offensively on defense. A huge play in the game, an opportunity to make a play, not able to do it. Not able to get any pass rush on that particular play. Thought the coverage was fine. But again, in this league, in the NFL against Josh Allen, coverage can only hold up for so long. Guess who? Oh, yeah, a tight end is in the end zone. Touchdown. The Bengals responded after that, had the one-hander from T. Higgins. But at the end of the day, that was a huge play. And, if you get a stop there, you're like, okay, we're right back in this thing. And credit to McDermott for going for it. That's the right call, is to go for it. Ryan Day, of course, would have kicked it. But, that was a play, 4th down. You had a chance to get off the field, make a huge play for your defense, stay in the game, weren't able to do it. So there were some positive plays through the defense throughout the game, but these huge moments, right, 3 of these plays I'm talking about are 4th down, right? The one, a 40-yard run from Allen where he goes untouched. Just can't happen. And finally, of course, the 3rd and 15. Last play of the game. People were getting frustrated at me about what I said about the onside kick. I was very clear about this. I said, in the moment, I thought, this is a mistake. They need to go onside. They only have 1 timeout in the 2-minute warning. Should be going onside here. That's what I thought in the moment. You can't, when something works out, when Zach makes a decision and it works out, I don't get the people that want to kill him anyway. It worked out. It was 3rd and 15, right? What's the better likelihood of happening? Recovering an onside kick or getting off the field on 3rd and 15? Doesn't take a genius to tell you. Even with this Bengals defense, the odds of getting off the field on 3rd and 15 are way higher than recovering an onside kick. They were in that spot. And then they were surprised, I guess, that Josh Allen took off. I don't know if there was issues with the discipline and the rush lanes or what have you, but there was a clear alley for him. There was only one guy that even had a chance to make a play, Geno Stone. And we bang on Geno Stone all the time, and we should, and we're going to continue to do it as long as he continues to play really, really bad football. But one-on-one in space like that with Josh Allen, maybe Kyle Hamilton gets him down, but I don't know many guys that are making that play, to be completely honest with you. That's an indictment on the coordinator for not having somebody or multiple guys expecting him to take off, right? They covered that play like it was 3rd and 15 in the second quarter, right? They're not going to throw the ball. They don't want to throw the ball. They don't want to give the ball back to Burrow with that much time on the clock. 3rd and 15, maybe 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, they're making a play like that. But 3rd and 15, you really think they're going to throw the ball down the field? Again, maybe a bubble, maybe a little screen, maybe a little quick button hook or whatever, try to get a guy in space? No, right? They're not going to throw it to the sticks. And that's how Cincinnati was operating defensively. Huge play, right? So those are just a few plays there where the defense, huge moment in the game, opportunity to make something happen. Again, in the NFL, always a couple of plays that really dictate the outcome of the game, and they weren't able to make a big play on any of those plays, and in turn, they lose the football game. I want to touch on T before we move on here. T. Higgins, I've been a big T. Higgins guy. I thought the writing was on the wall going into last year that it was going to be. Because remember, there was the dispute in the offseason, and then he was like, screw it, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to practice with my team, and I'm going to go from there after getting tagged, of course. And he was great last year, especially towards the end of the year. And, then you heard Joe start to say it, and you heard Zach kind of love up on T as well. And you're like, you know what? You need to get this thing done. My mindset changed. I was fine with T walking going into last year. Season ends. You hear what Burrow said. You saw the production of the offense and was like, you know what? No, T. Higgins needs to come back. Organization deserves a lot of crap for a lot of the things that have gone on. They deserve a lot of credit for this T. Higgins thing, in my opinion. Hasn't worked out and equated to wins yet, but I think it was still the right call. And I think it's still way too early to say it was not the right call. He's a great player. He's had some injury issues. Lots of people in this league do, right? People like Jamar Chase, that's kind of a unicorn, right? Knock on wood, but he doesn't get hurt. He hasn't gotten hurt yet. T's gotten banged up a few times. And whenever you have a guy with a concussion, coming off a concussion, you're always a little bit worried about him. And he hit his head several times in the game. Made some big-time plays, but was hitting his head. He got evaluated twice in the blue medical tent. And, look, you got to trust the neurologist. You got to trust the doctors. They went through all the tests with him, and they said he was fine to go out there and keep playing. Obviously, he was a little bit shaken up, and you were a little bit worried about him. And there was a lot of people that were like, T, let's sit down here. We're a little bit worried about you at this point. And he went out there, and he competed his butt off. They asked him after the game. He said, yeah, I'm a soldier, right? And I believe him. He totally is, and he deserves all the credit in the world. But then he got the symptoms again, right? And then he ends up in concussion protocol. He needs to sit out this week. I don't expect him to play against Baltimore. In fact, I would be shocked. I don't think Zach technically has ruled him out as of now as we're doing this live. But I would be shocked if T. Higgins played. And then the question becomes, if the Bengals lose against the Ravens, then they'll be eliminated. Then I think you sit T. Higgins down. Again, I was on the complete opposite side of this with Joe Burrow. It was a toe, not a concussion. Right, if Joe Burrow had multiple concussions, I wouldn't be saying send him out there in meaningless football games. Right, concussions, head injuries, totally different. Right, if you get two back-to-back like that and then you're going to risk a third in a single season when, you're not playing for the playoffs, I would sit him down at this point. And we'll have that conversation. Hopefully we're not. Hopefully the Bengals win and still have some life and T's ready to go the following week and we can, hit the ground running. But, if they lose this game against Baltimore, might be time to say, T, we love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you next year. Again, this isn't a knee. This isn't an ankle or a hammy, right, or a toe. It's concussion. It's very serious and needs to be treated very seriously there as well. So hopefully the Bengals win Sunday, of course, against Baltimore. But might be time to sit him down if they don't. And I don't think anybody should be bent out of shape about that if they ultimately make that decision. Story in the NFL right now, story in sports really. Phillip Rivers has been signed to the practice squad by the Indianapolis Colts. And I said this at the top of the show. Sports will do this to you every now and again. You never know quite when it's going to happen, but a story comes out. It's just a fun story, right? It happens in the NFL, it happens in baseball, it happens in basketball, it happens all over the place. And this is just a fun story, right? Phillip Rivers is a guy that was loved by many, not just around San Diego, but if you loved NFL football, you had a love and appreciation for Phillip Rivers and the way in which he played, right? The trash talk that he brought to the table. Just his love for football also is a big one because, you have these guys in the NFL who might be really, really good at football and really, really talented and getting paid a lot of money, but you kind of question, they really love this. They put in their all into this each and every day. Phillip Rivers absolutely loves football. He's a great ambassador for the game. And I mentioned this on and off the bench. Reed said that he thinks quarterback play is kind of the best it's been. I pushed back on that, right? Because I remember growing up and you had the Mannings, Brady, Breeze, Big Ben, Rivers. Those guys could flat out play the position and play the position at an elite level. And Rodgers, of course, in that group as well. And then they've all, Father Time catches up to everybody. Brady hung on the longest. Well, Rodgers, I guess, technically, still playing. But I kind of miss that. And you look around, there's a lot of youth at the position. There's a lot of great athletes, right? But it doesn't feel like old school quarterback that I grew up with. So it's a fun story that Phillip Rivers is being signed to the practice squad. Now, it's funny because he's talked about he's always kind of stayed ready, and there's been some situations that have come up over the course of the past few years where, he was intrigued and maybe something was about to happen, but ultimately nothing happened. But if you're a guy that still has a lot of love for the game, still thinks you can play, this is kind of the perfect situation to walk into or as good as it can be, I should say, if you're talking about the Indianapolis Colts, right? This isn't a team has 2 wins, right, that you're walking into, or this isn't a team that needs to win out to make the playoffs. It's an 8-5 team. This is a team that went all in at the trade deadline, gave up 2 first-round picks. The expectation is to win. And this is a team, of course, that lost their quarterback, and the other backups are hurt as well, right? Anthony Richardson, he's hurt. Riley Leonard, he's banged up. Maybe he'll be able to, come back at some point, but you don't know exactly his status here at this point. And then there's the question of, even if Leonard can go, would you take 44-year-old Phillip Rivers? I don't know. And, a part of you worries about him a little bit. There's been no word. Again, he's been signed to the practice squad as we're live right now. He's not been named the starter or anything like this. But when you make a move like this, the intent is that he eventually is going to play football for you, I think, right? Again, this is a guy that, in my opinion, is not a Hall of Famer, but he's like a fringe Hall of Famer, right? This isn't like you're bringing A.J. McCarron, who I absolutely love, to Cincinnati to just be in the room, right? That's the guy that's like, well, if you're going to bring him out of retirement, there's a good chance you want him on the football field. And apparently he's a high school football coach. Apparently he runs Shane Steichen's offense for his high school, and apparently him and Shane have a bunch of dialogue. Steichen, of course, was with the Chargers when Phillip was playing, and then Phillip, of course, ended his playing days with the Colts before ultimately retiring a Charger. But there's a relationship there. The two talk. There's a built-in trust there, and there's an understanding of football, right? What Shane Steichen does, it's not simple by any stretch of the imagination what he does offensively. And there's probably a lot of belief that Phillip could come in there and execute the offense. Now, physically, what's that going to look like? This is a guy that hasn't played in the NFL in several years. Again, he's not playing around on the PGA Tour. Shoot, he's not playing a Major League Baseball game either. He's playing, potentially, an NFL football game. And when you look at their schedule, right, I don't know if I anticipate him playing this week, but it's on the road at Seattle. I don't know if you've watched the Seahawks, but they fly around and they hit hard, right? He's 44 years of age. Don't necessarily feel great about that. The Texans are also on the schedule, right? And the Niners, that's kind of the game where I think you would see him, right? And that's in a couple of weeks. The Niners are a good football team, but, Warner's out, Bosa's out. Salah still gets the most out of that group, and they fly around and make plays. But, you feel better about Phillip going out there against the Niners than you would against a team like the Seattle Seahawks or certainly the Houston Texans there as well. So we'll see. It's very, very interesting. 44 years of age, has a grandkid, right? That's literally the truth, right? One of his kids already has a kid, and he's got a bunch of kids, of course. It's been well documented, but pretty crazy that a potential grandfather would be out there quarterbacking a team in the NFL. And again, there's a lot at stake here for the Colts. Like, they need to figure out how to win, right? Because if they go all in like they did at the trade deadline, had the start they did and don't make the playoffs, I mean, that would be just a huge fall from grace, and that would be a huge disaster if you're Indianapolis. Like, if you're Chris Ballard, who came into this year kind of on the hot seat, in my opinion, GM of the Colts, like, you can't make a move like that and miss the playoffs. I don't care who gets hurt, right? I don't care which quarterback gets hurt. You got to find a way to make do a little bit here. It's a tough schedule. They can play the Jaguars as well, along with the Niners, the Seahawks, and the Texans. Like, that is not easy. I think going 0-4 is a real possibility and missing the playoffs. But, I think Phillips been waiting for a moment like this. He stayed ready, and we'll see if ultimately his body can hang on. He's never had the strongest arm. I don't anticipate – I mean, he hardly could move anyway, but, like, his mobility's got to be next to nothing. And certainly the day after the game, he's going to be in just a world of pain. But it'll be an interesting situation to monitor. Texans are coming in that division. Jaguars, who we threw them in our top 10. Not very many people are talking about them. But, they're kind of making an interesting run at the division there as well, with just how good they play on the defensive side of the football. So, Phillip Rivers, that's kind of the story of the National Football League. It's a fun story. I'll tap in. Like, I was ready to not watch the Indianapolis Colts at all the rest of the year. And, I'll tap in. I'll see what old Phillip can do if he's out there on the football field at 44 years of age. Pretty incredible. Catch rule. Won't spend a ton of time on this, but if you watched the Steelers or saw the Steelers and the Ravens game last week, I wasn't obviously watching live, but I saw the clips back, and Baltimore really got hosed because they had an opportunity that they were taking the lead here. It looked like a pretty clear touchdown catch by Isaiah Likely, and ultimately they said, nope, that is not a touchdown. And I don't understand, because when you are in the end zone, totally different than when you're in the field of play. Right? And it's been officiated that way for a really long time. People say, oh, they broke the goal line, right? They broke the pylon. That's a touchdown, right? If you're a running back and you reach over the goal line, touchdown, and then the ball gets knocked out and you fumble, well, you broke the goal line. It counts. You scored. I don't understand why it doesn't work that way for catching the ball in the end zone as well, right? Because Likely clearly catches the ball, 3 feet come down, and then the ball comes out. Well, it's like if you're running the football and you reach over, touchdown, then it gets knocked out. That ain't a fumble, right? It's touchdown. You broke the goal line. I don't understand why it doesn't work like that in the end zone, right? And Baltimore really got hosed. I get it in the field of play. In the field of play, if it's bang like that, you're either going to call it, probably should call it an incomplete pass or potentially a fumble, of course. It doesn't work like that in the end zone. It's never been officiated that way in the end zone, so why are they officiating it that way right now? That's a huge issue in the NFL, and they kind of had it cleaned up for a little bit, but what is a catch and what is not a catch, all right? We all sit here and watch a ton of football. We don't even really know what a catch is. How is that not a catch? So that's something that the league really has to do a good job of fixing this offseason. It's unacceptable, if we're being completely honest. That's just such a basic, fundamental aspect of the game of football, catching the ball. Right? And there's people out there, and there's officials out there, and there's fans out there have no clue what is a catch and what is not a catch. So Harbaugh went to the league office, complained, as he should, right? And that's a huge game because that swings the division in favor of Pittsburgh. Now, the right thing to say as a competitor is, oh, we had a bunch of different opportunities throughout the course of the game, did not put ourselves in that position. We all understand that. But you watch that clip back. Looks like a touchdown to me. Right, and I'm not just saying that because the Bengals would have been better suited if the Ravens won as opposed to the Steelers, but this has got to get figured out in the NFL because it's absolutely ridiculous that this has gone on this long of not understanding what a catch is, right? Now, I feel like there have been spots in the past where that's been officiated a little bit differently, right? Are the officials going to be perfect as long as there's humans doing it? Absolutely not, but there has to be more consistency, especially in such a big moment. I don't understand how, that play happens. There aren't people that come together and say, you know what, we need to get this right and make the right play on the field because there's livelihoods at stake. There's playoff lives at stake as well. And that was very disappointing to see because there's people out there, not me. I'm always going to watch NFL football, but there's some people out there with the whole notion that it's rigged or whatever. I don't think it's rigged. I think it's ridiculous to say it is, but it's not ridiculous to say that officials cost teams some games when they shouldn't. Right, and that definitely has happened in the past, and in my opinion, that happened for the Baltimore Ravens there as well. Lastly, before we get out of here, I want to do my Super Bowl bubble. A lot of people do this, and it's our first time doing it on the show, and I've got 7 teams here that I think can win the Super Bowl as things sit right here on Wednesday, December 8th. The 10th. And we'll go through all of these teams here. And there's a couple of teams that have really good records that some people might think are really good teams that are on the outside looking in. And we got 1, 2, 3 from the AFC and 4 from the NFC. So let's kind of get into our Super Bowl bubble here. First up, I got the New England Patriots. Look, I've had them at 1 in my power rankings for a really, really long time. And if they continue to win, I'm going to keep them there. Tough game against Buffalo. We'll get to the Bills in a second. And there's some people that think, oh, they're a year too early here. No, I don't think so. Shoot, Bengals got to the Super Bowl in 21. Burrow's second year after he blew out his knee. Right? I don't think they're too early at all, especially when you talk about the attributes that Drake May has and his ability to extend plays and the athleticism that he shows, the belief that he has in himself, the belief his teammates have in him as well. And his head coach, Mike Vrabel, right? Vrabel, of course, has never coached in a Super Bowl, but to sit here and suggest that you don't think New England can win the Super Bowl, I think would be crazy. I think they absolutely can. I think they're a well-oiled machine. I think they're well-rounded. They've got the quarterback position right. They've got the head coach position right. They've got skill guys that can make some plays. They can run the ball. Hendrickson appears to be a home run draft pick. Defensively, Gonzalez there on the outside can really lock down a top guy. Linebackers are good. They have a pass rush. Stop the run, so that they've got all elements that they need. And, of course, they play in New England, have played in the elements. That's something you're going to have to be able to do in the postseason as well. So I understand the hesitation with, first-year coach, first year in New England, and then a young quarterback in Drake May. But this is a guy that's in the thick of the MVP conversation. So I absolutely believe New England could potentially win a world championship this year. Secondly, the Buffalo Bills. They've got issues. The Bengals had them beat, weren't able to finish. But this feels like a year for Buffalo, kind of, if not now, when type of situation for the Bills, right? Because you don't have to deal with Mahomes, probably don't have to deal with Burrow. Good chance you don't have to deal with Lamar either. You're going to be sitting and looking at, a Bo Nix, who I believed in when they drafted him, but he's really struggled, right? A young guy in Drake May, right? Potentially a really old Aaron Rodgers, right? These are the type of teams. The Jaguars, right? The Texans, probably with a really good defense, but the AFC is probably never going to look more accessible for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And you've got that joker, right? You've got that card that you can play that nobody else can that's going to be in the playoffs, and that, of course, is the card of Josh Allen. So, this isn't the best Bills team we've seen. They've had much better teams over the course of the past few years, but this is probably their best opportunity to go in there into the playoffs and make some noise. I really think Buffalo can absolutely win. Now, they should have lost on Sunday, and I don't think I'd be having a different conversation, by the way, if the Bengals won. I still think I'd put Buffalo in that category. But, with that card of Josh Allen that they can play at any given time, especially when you don't have to deal with Mahomes, probably don't have to deal with Lamar, probably don't have to deal with Burrow, right? It's there for the taking for the Bills. I've got them in as well. Final team in the AFC, Houston Texans. People laugh and say that's crazy. Look at the defense. Watch them play a game. I understand some people that are football fans just are watching to see points and quarterbacks and big-time chunk plays and exciting stuff. That's fine. But Houston Texans, in my opinion, play a really fun style of football. They do not give up many first downs. They hit you hard. They force some turnovers. They got guys at all 3 levels of their defense, and they got a head coach that believes in them, and he's orchestrating the defense beautifully. As a different guy calling the plays, but D'Amico, of course, is a defensive-minded guy. And look at the Seahawks team that absolutely beat the crud out of the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning several years ago. Yeah, Russell Wilson ran the offense and didn't turn the ball over and, made some chunk plays with his moon balls right down the field. That was a defensive team that won the championship. I'm not saying this Texans team's the Legion of Boom, but they're the best defense in the National Football League, and that's the type of defense that you could ride throughout the playoffs, especially, again, not going to deal with Mahomes, right? Not going to deal with Burrow. Probably not going to have to deal with Lamar. Really, the one elite quarterback you got to deal with is Josh Allen. And, of course, there's an opportunity that they don't even play if, Buffalo perhaps gets knocked out or whatever the case may be. But I believe in CJ. All he's done his first 2 years is win a playoff game. People were a little bit too early to crown him as he's one of the best players in the NFL. And he doesn't belong up there with Burrow and Herbert and Allen and Mahomes and Jackson, those guys. But he's very much on that next tier, right? And he can be there for a long time. He can have a long career if he can stay healthy and play good football. And if he has that defense, Houston's going to be a threat here going forward. So I understand that they're kind of just getting hot here of recent. I understand they've got lots of issues offensively, can't run the football, don't protect Stroud the best. But when you have a defense like that, you absolutely can win a world title. I've got them in as my final team in the AFC. Now 4 teams in the NFC. Green Bay. I've been all over Green Bay all year. Kind of started out slow. They've had some weird moments, certainly, right? Losing to the Panthers, losing to the Browns, tying the Cowboys. It's like, well, what's going on here? Defense is really good. They've got that closer, obviously, Micah Parsons, who he's going to win them a playoff game, in my opinion. He'll close out a playoff game. Jordan Love deserves some MVP buzz. He's been playing great. People talking about LaFleur on the hot seat. Yeah, how's that look right now? I think LaFleur is just fine. They can run it. They can throw it. I believe in their coach. He hasn't obviously, won a championship or gotten to a Super Bowl yet, but I think he's that caliber of a head coach. I believe in the quarterback. He can make all the throws. He's tough. He can make all the plays. And I've got Green Bay very firmly in this Super Bowl bubble. 3 more. The Rams, but they're in a great spot, right? Matthew Stafford's playing incredible, right? I think, it's going to be interesting what they do with him this offseason. They're kind of on like a year-in, year-out basis with him at this point where it's like, okay, how do you feel, Matthew? What are you going to do here? And then signs to 1 year and kind of goes from there. Had an opportunity to go elsewhere for more money. Said no. Said I'll take the hometown discount and stay in L.A. But they absolutely can win. Puka, Devontae Adams, what a move that was this offseason. Just incredible getting him on their team. McVay utilizes him brilliantly. They can run it. Defense is sound. They're well coached. I think they would probably be the favorite to win the world title here at this point. Got the Rams in. 2 more NFC West teams that I have in this bubble. So 3 of the 7 teams I have in the same division, as crazy as that is to say out loud. And kind of similar to what I was saying with the Texans, feel that way about the Seahawks. That's a really good defense. McDonald, he's not over his skis by any stretch of the imagination. He knows what he's doing. He feels good about what he's doing. He's coaching with a lot of confidence, moving with a lot of confidence. They got guys that can make plays on that defense. They fly around. They create turnovers. And I feel a lot better about them offensively than I do about the Texans. But I don't know if I trust their quarterback more than I trust C.J. Stroud. That game, I've mentioned this repeatedly on the show, that game against the Rams a couple of weeks ago is kind of going to live rent-free in my mind for quite some time, right? All those turnovers, single-handedly losing them that game against the Los Angeles Rams. I'm going to be a little bit worried about Sam Darnold going into the playoffs. Of course, he had a great year last year in Minnesota. Then the final game against Detroit, not good. The playoff game against the Rams, not good as well. And the NFC is really, really good, so they're not going to have a layup their first playoff game. It's going to be very, very difficult. But just the product that they've put out on the field, the defense in which they play, the throws that Sam Darnold has made throughout the duration of the year, the big playability, of course, of JSN, the leadership they have on that team, they belong firmly in the bubble there as well. Lastly, I got the Niners in the bubble here at this point, if we're being completely honest. They have all these injuries defensively, but all they do is win. They run the football incredibly well. McCaffrey, he's a guy that can be your horse and get you through the postseason. You can lean on a guy like that. Purdy's had an up-and-down return since he's been back. Throws it to the other team maybe a little bit too much, has a little bit of that gunslinger in him, right? Those Brett Favre tendencies where it's like, this guy just isn't protecting the football, right? And that can be an issue, certainly for Brock Purdy. But I absolutely believe in the Niners, and I think I'm definitely higher on the Niners than other people out there just because, they've got a lot of injuries or whatever. But I trust Shanahan. I trust Purdy enough. And, I trust the coaching of that team, and I trust Christian McCaffrey as well. So I've got them in our Super Bowl bubble here. And the teams that are on the outside looking in, I've got Denver out. I understand they've won all these games, but I don't trust them offensively. They're winning close games. At some point, your luck's going to run out, right? I mean, you're in a close game with the Raiders. Raiders are horrible. Raiders might be the worst team in the NFL. I've got them out. The Bears, I've got them out as well. Big believer in Ben Johnson. I don't trust their quarterback. He's completing around 50% of his passes. It's not good enough. It's not close. Until he gets that up a little bit, I'm not ready to put the Bears in that category. The Lions, I thought about putting them in. But they got too many questions defensively, right? If their offense is off a little bit or Goff has a couple of turnovers, I don't know if they're going to be able to overcome that in a game. They got too many weaknesses defensively. Really, without Hutchinson, they would be in a world of trouble, but he kind of keeps them alive a little bit defensively. You got Campbell calling the plays. What's that going to look like? And they go for it on 4th down, in my opinion, too much. So I thought about putting them in there, but I got them on the outside looking in. The Chargers, they got too many injuries along the offensive line. Herbert's got a broken hand. He's banged up. Didn't play great, good enough to win, but he was inaccurate with the football. Don't usually see that from him. But they're well coached, thought about putting them in. And I do think there's a world where you trust them a little bit more than Denver, as crazy as that sounds in that division. But they're on the outside looking in. The whole AFC North, right? Ravens, Steelers, they're not in the bubble, right? They're not good enough. And the Jaguars, of course, I'm not ready to put in the bubble either here at this point. All right, a couple of headlines before we get out of here. I saw a mock draft yesterday, and I wanted to bring this up on the show. Or actually this morning, Field Yates of ESPN put one out, and it had the Bengals picking at 10, and it had Caleb Downs going at number 9 to the Rams. You might think the Rams, what the heck? They made that trade with the Falcons last year. They have the Falcons' first-round pick. So the Rams very well could win the Super Bowl and then have a top 10 pick. I think that really is a situation that could come true, which is kind of scary for the rest of the NFL. But if the Bengals are in a spot, right, and, we'll see how they do over the course of the next few weeks and how their draft pick fluctuates. Obviously, if they run the table the rest of the way, it's not going to be that great of a pick. If they kind of split these games, kind of be hanging out where they're at probably, and certainly if they continue to lose, they're going to have a pretty good pick here. If you're in a spot where you're picking 10, right, and the team that's picking 9 is up, and Caleb Downs is still available, I don't care what you got to trade. Like, I would trade away something serious in order to get Caleb Downs, right, because that is a guy that can come in and literally, not single-handedly fix your defense, but your defense will improve, and it will be a straight upward trajectory. Your defense will skyrocket with Caleb Downs, right? And I'm not just saying that because, he's at Ohio State and keep him here in the state of Ohio. Caleb Downs is unbelievable. And if you watch him, he plays like an NFL player, and he has for quite some time. From a leadership perspective, a communication perspective, and a Swiss Army knife perspective, he can do it all. And some people might say, trading up, giving away capital for a safety, it's not an edge rusher, it's not a left tackle. What are you talking about? Caleb Downs is that guy. There's always a few guys in the NFL draft that you're like, oh, yeah, that guy's going to be a really good NFL player. He's a can't-miss guy, right? Caleb Downs is one of them, right? Like Tyler Warren, right? Penn State tight end. There wasn't a world where he wasn't going to be a solid tight end in the NFL, right? Caleb Downs, defensively, same situation. He's going to be a great player. He's going to be a Pro Bowl caliber player. And if he's there, right, still there, and you're just one pick away, trade up, right? Don't take any risks. Do whatever you can to get him on your team. Lastly, Miami Redhawks basketball, Travis Steele. They are off to an incredible start. They're in action tonight against UNC Asheville. They had a lot of guys come back. Suter still there for the Redhawks. And not really much going on in the sporting world tonight here on a Wednesday, but might tap into the Redhawks and see exactly what they got on store tonight. As, it's tough playing in the MAC, right? Kind of got to win that conference in order to get into the dance. They were so close last year. Nate Johnson makes a great play at the end of the game. They win basically at the buzzer. Akron goes instead. But it's a really good team, and Travis Steele's doing some really good stuff at Miami. Obviously, was at Xavier, kind of in a tough spot. Obviously, it's a lot more pressure at Xavier, but what he's doing in Oxford, he's quietly done a terrific job and deserves a lot of credit, certainly, for that. Redhawks in action tonight. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us here at the Stone Shield Show, here at Chatterbox Sports. We appreciate each and every one of you. We will have some of those clips go up on YouTube later today. We'll have some interviews on the show throughout the rest of the week there as well. So certainly looking forward to that. Appreciate everyone as always. Until then, take care, everybody.